And joining me now is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, traveling with President Trump in Malaysia. Secretary Bessent, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Kristen, good to be with you.
Well, it is wonderful to have you. You are there meeting with your Chinese counterparts ahead of President Trump's planned meeting with President Xi of China. Mr. Secretary, do you believe that China is ready to make a trade deal?
Kristen, I can tell you they are, because we just finished 2 days of negotiations, and we've created a framework for the two leaders to discuss on Thursday in Korea.
So that's optimism. President Trump had threatened to impose an additional 100% tariffs on China on November 1st if Beijing goes forward with a plan to put restrictions on rare earth minerals, as you know. If China refuses to pull back those restrictions, Mr. Secretary, can you confirm that President Trump will, in fact, impose those 100% tariffs against China?
Well, Kristen, I think that's old news. President Trump gave me a great deal of negotiating leverage with the threat of the 100% tariffs on November 1st, and I believe we've reached a very substantial framework that will avoid that and allow us to discuss many other things with the Chinese. I think we will be able to discuss them helping us get this terrible fentanyl crisis under control. I think we are going to be able to discuss substantial soybean and ag purchases for our American farmers. I think we are going to be able to discuss more balanced trade. And I'm not going to get ahead of the two leaders, but I think that they will also be discussing President Trump's global peace plan that he's been so successful at, both here in Asia, the Middle East, and now he's looking to Ukraine, Russia.
Mr. Secretary, you said a couple of significant things. It sounds like you're saying you are not anticipating a 100% tariff against China on November 1st, and seems like you're saying that China is poised to purchase soybeans to open up those markets again?
I believe that we have the framework for the two leaders to have a very productive meeting for both sides, and I think it will be fantastic for U.S. citizens, for U.S. farmers, and for our country in general.
Okay, but you're not anticipating the 100% tariffs?
No, I'm not, and I'm also anticipating that we will get some kind of a deferral on the rare earth export controls that the Chinese had discussed.
Okay.
But again, this will all be, my counterpart, the Vice Premier, and I have set the framework, and it will be up to the two leaders to discuss the final terms.
Okay, well, let's talk about another major trade issue, which is Canada, of course. This week, President Trump abruptly broke off trade talks with Canada and put another 10% tariff on Canada in response to an ad that the government of Ontario ran. It features former President Ronald Reagan. Why is the president setting trade policy based on a television ad he doesn't like?
Well, Kristen, let's think about this. This is a kind of propaganda against U.S. citizens. It's psyops. Why would the government of Ontario? I'm told that they have spent or were planning to spend up to $75 million on these ads to come across the U.S. border. So what was the purpose of that other than to sway public opinion? And, it's some kind of propaganda that the Premier of Ontario unilaterally launched.
Will the 10% tariffs apply to all Canadian goods, Mr. Secretary?
Kristen, I've been traveling since this unfortunate event happened. I know that the ad's been taken down. So, we'll have to see. But I just think it was terrible, terrible judgment by this premier, who has a bit of a reputation for being a hothead.
Does the president know if the tariffs will apply to 10% tariffs will apply to all Canadian goods? Has he made a determination about that?
Well, I'm sure I'm sure he knows, and I'm sure the Ambassador Greer knows. But again, we're here out in Asia, and we're doing these big trade deals out in Asia. We just signed the Malaysian deal today, which was fantastic. And I've been spending the past 2 days negotiating with the Chinese. So whatever is going on back in North America, I think is taking second fiddle to President Trump's leadership out here in the Pacific.
Okay, let me ask you about something here back at home. Inflation. We learned this week that inflation in September ticked back up to 3%. That's the highest level since January. I want you to take a listen to something that President-elect Trump told me back in December. Take a look.
I started using the groceries. When you buy apples, when you buy bacon, when you buy eggs, they would double and triple the price over a short period of time. And I won an election based on that. We're going to bring those prices way down.
Mr. Secretary, coffee prices are up 19% from a year ago. Beef is up almost 15%, and bacon up almost 6%, just to name a few. So when are all grocery prices going to come down, as President Trump promised?
Well, Kristen, it's unfortunate. As much as I like you, you like to cherry pick. So, when we came in, it was eggflation, eggflation, eggflation. Egg prices are down, gasoline prices are down. Overall, the inflation since President Trump has come in, has come down. We inherited this terrible affordability crisis from the Biden administration. The first thing we had to do was get it under control. And this month's inflation number was actually below the consensus number. If we look at core inflation, it was 0.2%, which was the lowest it's been in a long time. Rents are coming down. So, Kristen, you don't get to cherry pick. Inflation is a composite number, and I am confident that in the coming months, inflation is going to come down.
Just to be very clear, though, CPI has been higher in the past 3 months than it was in the first 5 months of the year. If President Trump's economic policies are working, why is inflation up? Why are those grocery prices that I just mentioned that he said were so critical, why are they up?
Well, again, Kristen, you're cherry picking because inflation actually had a drop, the first drop in 4 years in March and April under President Trump. And I am confident that as we come into the coming numbers, that we will see a drop in inflation back towards the Fed's 2% target. And I assume your next question is going to be to blame it on tariffs. And the imported goods have actually been quite flat or dropped, and it's mostly service goods. And another factor in the inflation report is what's called investment management income, and that's inflation that goes up because the stock market goes up, so management fees are higher. Okay,
let me turn to another big issue. The Trump administration recently extended a $20 billion lifeline to Argentina that has gotten some bipartisan criticism, Mr. Secretary, including from Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. I'll read you a little bit of what she wrote. She says, quote, Americans are getting decimated with high cost of living and skyrocketing insurance costs. Many of them have zero savings, and some are maxing out credit cards to survive. Tell me how it's America first to bail out a foreign country with 20 or even 40 billion taxpayer dollars. How is this move America first, Mr. Secretary?
Well, Kristen, it is America first because we are supporting a U.S. ally. There will be no taxpayer losses. This is a swap line. This is not a bailout. And it is from the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which I control at Treasury. It is never registered a loss. It is not going to register a loss this time. We are supporting a U.S. ally in Latin America, and we want to set the tone in Latin America because look at what's going on in Venezuela. It is a failed narco state, and I'm a big fan of Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think she's fantastic voice in Congress. But please let me finish. So we think it is much better to use American economic power up front to stabilize a friendly government and lead the way, because we've got many other governments. We've got many other governments in Latin America, Bolivia, Ecuador, Paraguay, who all want to follow. So I would rather extend a swap line than be shooting at the boats carrying drugs as we're having to coming out of Venezuela.
Well, you take me to my next question, because the military has now launched 10 attacks, killing more than 40 people against these suspected drug smuggling boats, as you just referenced. Is the United States at war with Venezuela, Mr. Secretary?
Kristen, I have a big portfolio. The defense is not one of them. I think you'd have to ask our great Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, or Secretary of State Marco Rubio on that. But what I can tell you is the President's committed to protecting U.S. citizens from the ravages of these drugs. And also, you were asking earlier about the China trade deal, and part of that is going to include very substantial cooperation to stop the precursor drugs on fentanyl, which make their way to Mexico, to Canada, and kill hundreds of thousands of Americans a year and ruin families.
Well, and it's worth noting that the vast majority of fentanyl comes to the U.S. from Mexico. Let me ask you, because we're almost out of time, I just want to get two more questions in. The East Wing of the White House was demolished this week to make way for President Trump's plans for a ballroom, as you know. It surprised a lot of people, given that President Trump said this back in July. Take a look.
It won't interfere with the current building. It'll be near it, but not touching it, and pays total respect to the existing building, which I'm the biggest fan of. It's my favorite place. I love it.
Why didn't the president tell the public he was going to tear down the entire East Wing, which, as you know, is a part of the People's House?
Well, again, I think this was a judgment call on the president. The president is a master builder, and Kristen, I was for many years on the board of something called Classical American Homes, and I completely endorse what the president's doing here with the ballroom. And I don't know. I assume that maybe parts of the East Wing, could have been asbestos, could have been mold, could have not fit with the design. But the classical architecture firm that's doing this is a magnificent structure that's going up. That my office looks over it, and I'm watching the demolition here, and the construction that's already underway. And this is moving at warp speed, and I think it's going to be something that all Americans can be proud of. And we have a history of presidents renovating and adding to the White House campus. It started with Thomas Jefferson. I don't think anybody would argue when Thomas Jefferson they added the colonnades. It was controversial at the time.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, and of course the question is about his revealing to the American public and saying he wouldn't have to actually tear down the building, and now that's what's happening. But very quickly, before I let you go, we're now in the second longest shutdown in U.S. history. When will President Trump meet with Democrats to try to bring this shutdown to a close and get federal workers their paychecks back again, Mr. Secretary?
Well, Kristen, I'm going to have to reject the premise of your question. Why does President Trump have to meet with Democrats? Democrats just need to go into the Senate and vote to end the shutdown.
But
Let's look at the
President
numbers.
Trump has said in the past
52,
it's up to the president.
52,
He's the president.
No.
No, he said that in the past. He said you have to be a leader. The president has to lead. You have to get people into a room. You have to get a deal. When's he going to do that?
Well, he is leading, and there's no deal to do with Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer is trading off his polls. What's different than when he passed a clean CR in the spring? It's his polls. The whole country's being held captive to AOC's polls. But let's look at the numbers. It's 52-3. 52 Republicans have voted, I believe it's 11 times, to reopen the government. 3 Democrats have. And right here, right now, I would urge moderate Democratic senators to come across the aisle, reopen the government, because I'll tell you, we're starting to eat into muscle here. This is starting to affect travel. It's starting to affect the economy. And, this is quixotic. I don't know what the purpose is. I'm not sure they do.
All right. Secretary Scott Bessent, thank you so much. Safe travels. We appreciate your joining us.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.